This movie is so deliciously super bloody.
It is.
And all that red on the white snow. I mean,
Exactly.
my fave.
I think it would be a very interesting rewatch right now because I think those divides that you're talking about
yes.
have only been accentuated in the years since this movie has come out.
So while I don't think this is a straight horror movie, like Carpenter is absolutely playing with a lot of horror tropes.
But when you think like really genre films, I think that this is the first movie you think of when you say a Siege movie. This is the first
100%.
one.
Welcome back, the Fright Club podcast, invading your space as we talk about sieges and more with a couple special guests. Welcome in. She is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we are from madwolf.com, bringing you the Fright Club podcast. And we had actually big news since the last podcast, and a lot of people to thank that watched our movie Obstacle Corpse, available now.
That is right. It is. It's on VOD. You can find it on Prime. You can find it on Vudu.
Right.
You can find it beginning Friday at the Gateway Film Center, where it is going to have at least a week's run. Could be longer if enough people buy tickets. So come out and see it.
Yep, that's here at our home base of Columbus, Ohio. Great to see it. I mean, we've seen it a few times on the big screen, but, we love big screen experiences. So as much as we love that it's available very conveniently for everyone to dial up, we love that it's on the big screen as well.
Yeah, also it is, if I may say so myself, it's a fun movie to watch on the big screen.
It is, and you may say so.
I may say so. It gets a good reaction from the crowd, so it's a fun one to watch with the crowd.
Yeah, and we had a great response from Fright Clubbers throughout that have watched the movie and have been waiting for it because let's be honest, we've been hyping it now for a while. So thank you so much to everybody who watched it.
Yeah, I wanted to thank especially Jen Dreadful and Dustin Meadows, who we will talk about again in a second. Our friends Seth, Brandon, Daniel, and more, who took to the internets to talk about how much they enjoyed finally getting a chance to see it. So that was awesome of everybody.
They didn't actually say, enough already.
No.
Finally, we get to see the movie. You've been talking about it for too damn long. But no, it's great. We really appreciate that. So Obstacle Corpse, streaming now on Prime, on Vudu. And I love that it's on Vudu now because it lets me say that voodoo that you do.
That's right. You do like to say that.
Too often. But the more places you can see it, the better. So check it out. Thank you so much.
And we also want to thank everybody who came out last month. Lovable Losers. We watched Happiness of the Katakuris in Fright Club Live, which is that is a fun movie to watch with a crowd.
It was.
It would be a weird movie to watch alone, I think, because you would keep looking around like, is everybody seeing this? But then there would be no one but you.
Yeah, and it was a great response from the people who had not seen it before. We always take that poll before we start the film. How many people have seen this particular movie? And a lot of people had not.
Most people had not.
And I was very curious to get their reaction. Not everybody was down with the experience, and I get that.
It's like if a karaoke video, like behind you when you do karaoke, if like a karaoke video and you were just watching it instead of the singer and it killed a bunch of people, you'd be like, oh, that's kind of like watching this movie.
Yeah, and of course, it's one of our favorite filmmakers, Takashi Miike.
Yes.
Maybe not all of them are bullseyes, but we always want to know what he's doing.
Yes, and someday we'll catch up and have seen all 115 of his movies, but that is going to take a while. But we're trying.
We are trying.
We got some great feedback again from our friend Dustin and Corey because our topic was lovable losers, and so we like to have people point out. George likes when people point out who I miss on the list. I think that's the closest thing to accurate. Dustin and Corey both. Shelley from Friday the 13th. That's true. He deserved a mention. He maybe not a place on the list, but maybe, honestly. That was a good one. Corey also says Randy Meeks from Scream. Okay. All right. He's not that lovable, really, to me.
Well, that's
a good character.
That's part of it. You got to be lovable.
That's right. And Seth, happy belated birthday, by the way, Seth. Elvis and JFK from Bubba Hotep. I can see that. Mm-hmm. They are both lovable, and they, especially in the context of that film, losers.
Yeah, anytime we can mention Bubba Hotep.
Exactly.
Is a good thing.
Yeah.
So always love the feedback. Thank you so much. I think somebody mention Carrie?
Maybe so. Yeah.
I thought, okay, that's such a major character.
Yeah.
You kind of think of lovable losers as side characters.
Well, I can't. I mean, I don't. It's not that. I can't see her as lovable. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's the terror.
Sympathetic. Yeah.
Sympathetic. Yeah. We are going to do a sympathetic murderers. That's going to be a topic at some point.
Okay. So we move from lovable losers to Siege. Now I know in getting together at least our list, there was you had to establish the parameters about what made a Siege film.
Yes, which sometimes you do if it's a broad topic with so many movies. I have to just think, okay, I've got to categorize because that's what I do in my brain is categorize. Also, I want to point out that our one of our two lovely guests, Dustin Meadows, this was his topic of choice. He was the one who pitched this topic, which is a great topic, and I don't like to take credit when it wasn't my idea. And so what I was looking at, I was looking for an organized military style, not necessarily military, but military style siege, right? Assault meant to overtake a city or a target. So I was avoiding home invasion films like Funny Games, which I will talk about Funny Games as often as I can. But Strangers, I was avoiding those, and I was also avoiding zombie films because almost every zombie film, honestly, can at some point becomes like a siege movie. So I was kind of avoiding zombie movies, and then I want to just run through a handful that almost made our list. And this was tough because there are some great movies. There are some great movie options, even if once you prune away those others. So almost made our list. Attack the Block. I fucking love that movie.
Love it.
I love that movie so much. It's hard for me to see it as a horror film. Sci-fi for sure, thriller maybe. I can't see it as a horror film. So that's why I didn't put it on there. A couple of horror films outright that didn't quite make it. Malum and Let Us Pray.
Yeah.
I like both of those, and they both are riffs on Assault on Precinct 13. Now, I could see how somebody sees that movie as a horror movie, especially since Carpenter made it, but I don't. I see it as like a police thriller. So
you're making the rules.
I'm making my rules. Some people might break them. But the point is, I don't have it. George, you and I, we don't have it. We don't have Assault on Precinct 13 on our list. So.
All right. Well, enough of us. Let's welcome in our two special guests today. And one of them, you already mentioned Dustin. It was his idea.
Yeah, a couple of times, actually. Yeah. Dustin Meadows, a friend of ours who moved to L.A. not too long, a couple of years ago. We've missed him at the Fright Clubs and the Fright Club Lives. He is out there. He's a filmmaker. He's an actor, composer, comic. Thank you for joining us, Dustin.
Thanks for having me. I've been very excited to do this, and I miss being at Fright Club.
We missed
And you left out Calendar Model.
Oh, I did leave out Calendar Model.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Also Calendar Model, yes.
Yeah, so
Star of the Runway.
And then Dustin has brought along his friend, who we've not met before. We're excited to get a chance to meet, Allison Locke, a filmmaker, who we watched her film The Apology on Shudder this week. Super impressive.
Shudder.
Also, co-starring like one of my heroes my whole life, Janine Garofalo.
Yeah.
The bowler from also, right. So let's just take a second and be sad that Paul Rubens died this week. The spleen and the bowler. The bowler was like a hero. That's who I wanted to grow up to be. So that must have been exciting to work with her. Hey, welcome, Allison. I'm just going to keep talking. Sorry.
Thank you so much for having me on. I love your podcast. I love your taste.
Thank you. Congratulations on all your success with the film. I mean, I know it's on more outlets than Shudder, and we'll talk about that, but we love Shudder, so congrats.
Yeah.
Yes. I love Shudder too. When I found out the film was going to be on Shudder, I burst into tears.
Yeah. I don't doubt it. That is fantastic.
And it's not a siege film, although I have to admit that like halfway through I thought, wouldn't that be kind of funny? But it's a very intimate, really claustrophobic, very tense thriller with actually, a small but really exceptional cast, all faces and names that you would know from a ton of other stuff. So Linus Rocha, he was so good in it. It was great. It was a really impressive film. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. And I can also just assuage any fears you might have that Janine Garofalo is the queen we all deserve and love and hope for. She was such a supportive collaborator, so smart. She just absolutely got what her part in it was. I just love her.
That's great to hear.
Love to hear that.
When she was talking to her dog's pooping, but they're in the middle of this big bad snowstorm, and she's just like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was funny because I actually wrote that scene originally as she was talking to herself because that's what I do. And she was like, well, she's very obsessed with dogs. Her and her partner both do all these things for dogs. And so she's like, well, I just talk to my dogs all the time. So that was her idea to turn that into talking
smart.
to dogs.
Very cool. Well,
Always
congrats
got to
on
give
that.
credit where credit is due.
That's right.
Understood. So you guys have collaborated on your top 5. We've got our top 5, and we have just one overlap.
That's right.
So we're going to talk about a lot of films. So let's do that.
May I also just say from the beginning, I love the movies on your list too. So I think a lot of these were also sort of runner-ups for us. A lot of the runner-ups that you mentioned were ones for us as well. Like obviously my movie is more of a sort of take on the home invasion, but I love siege movies, so we had way too much fun. We also had to kind of take zombie movies out of the equation because it was like it would basically be like our number 1 and 4 zombie movies.
Oh, exactly.
So it's a little less interesting, you know?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Understood. Okay, so we'll just go with 5-5. We'll just start off. Who's starting?
We start with their list first.
Okay.
And that way, our last is always the last thing we talk about. So it seems like I'm being polite. Let's start with the guest. It's not at all. It's totally about me.
All right. So you guys get to kick it off with your number 5. Take it away.
Perfect. Our number 5. This movie is kind of the whole reason that I wanted to do this, because I don't feel like this movie gets talked about nearly enough. And we went with VFW, Joe Begos's siege movie with a bunch of character actor veterans under siege from a bunch of drug-addled, essentially zombies. From 2020, I think, that this got like theatrical distribution. And when this came to Gateway, I saw it 3 times the one week that it was there. This was my favorite movie of that year.
Anybody else want to come in my bar?
Yeah, I loved it too. That's a recent watch for me because Dustin turned me onto it, and I love movies in general, but especially horror movies with older characters. I get very excited about it. I love ensembles. That's what part of what I love about siege movies is it gives you the opportunity to marry the sort of the violence and the, you know, craziness and the strategy that I love about, you know, good horror movies with these ensemble characters. And I just thought they did an outstanding job, especially Stephen Lang. I just loved so much in this.
Yeah.
He is so outstanding. He is just like, I just love that they approach this ridiculous kind of premise in a lot of ways with this very grounded, almost like kind of Steppenwolf theatrical acting. Like the actors are so good and grounded in this.
Yeah, I agree. I love to see veterans like that. He's great. Plus, if you're like me and you grew up with a dad who was always going to the VFW, you wonder what's going on in there, and you finally find out.
Yeah, they're improvising weapons and waging guerrilla warfare against the local drug trade,
and a little gambling probably too. But if that's what it takes, I love it.
No, it's a great premise that he came up with. You know, it's like, you always think about that, like, okay, what if the zombies, or in this case, they're not exactly zombies, but they're drug-addled and zombie-like, and what if they attack this group or that group, and it's like a family or military. It's like, well, it's the VFW. I mean, they're like old men, and yet they are veterans of foreign wars. I mean, they have experience, and they are badasses, and, you know, what do they care if they die? Turns out they don't, so that's, you know, you've got that going for you. And it's so gritty. It's so, I mean, Begos's movies are like that. They have this like underbelly sort of feel about them. All of them do, and this really electric current of action all the way through them. And it's quite a gem. It really is. That movie is. And mainly I think it is because of, otherwise, you know, it would feel like, oh, it's another sort of Escape from New York riff with less money. But it's got such a completely different vibe because it's so rooted in these veteran actors who all do such a great job. It's like they're so excited to get a chance to show off again, you know? And then all together, they get a chance to just work off of each other. I think that's a lot of it, too, is like the camaraderie within that bar was great.
Yeah, and you can feel the actors having fun with it. Like there's a real which works perfectly because they're supposed to play. They're playing long-term friends. Yeah, and so that's really lovely.
For sure.
Yeah, and this cast like across the board is so good. We have a couple that'll be in some other stuff coming up.
Yes, indeed. I noticed there was one actor, 3 of our films.
Yep. You get William Sadler, who I absolutely love. Anytime he shows up, you got Fred Williamson. David Patrick Kelly, definitely most popular for Warriors, but great in everything he shows up in. Martin Coe from The Karate Kid, and then George Wendt as well. Like, this cast is phenomenal, and like just getting to see them. And I've also been a huge Stephen Lang fan since I was a kid, and I saw him in The Hard Way with Michael J. Fox as the villain. So yeah, like the last 5 or 6 years, getting to see this like surge of him like getting lead roles in genre pictures has been really cool.
Agreed. And that is their number 5 for Dustin Allison, VFW. So let's go to ours, and this is from 2007. After an Alaskan town is plunged into darkness for a month, it is attacked by a bloodthirsty gang of vampires. 30 Days of Night.
That cold ain't the weather. That's death approaching.
They're tearing through everyone's home.
We can last the month.
We've talked about this one before. First of all, because I can't believe we never thought of the idea before that you're vampires. So naturally, why don't you go to the areas of the world where it's night for
I bet
a
we're
full
not the
month?
only ones that
I'm
thought,
sure.
why didn't I think
Yes, why did I think of that? So, but I was a little, given the cast, the main cast at the time, I was a little worried. But I mean, they pulled it off, and a great deal of it has to do with, well, I think with David Slade's direction, but also with the actual vampires, the way the vampires are conceptualized, and the fact that Danny Houston is the main vampire, and he's so
love Danny
magnificent. But
Houston.
the way they all look is
Agreed.
so amazing. And then, so they descend and of course they tear the shit out of a ton of people. And then the people who are left are in like these little clusters in whatever house they happen to be in at the time. And the best scene is although there are some great scenes throughout, but the best scene is there's this little cluster of people and they're hiding in an attic, and the old man in the attic has dementia, and so they never know when he's going to go off and make noise and draw attention. And they hear the little girl outside crying and calling for help. And they look out and they got to keep people from going out to help her, and she's just clutching this doll and she's crying down the street. And then they pan back and you see the vampires just on top of the houses looking down and waiting, like, who's coming out? Because we're hungry.
Yeah.
It's so great. And then just the way that they, like, these really, and I don't usually like the quick cut, but I mean, the way that they attack the people in the houses at the very beginning, and you don't even see the vampires, you just see the body disappear and then carnage everywhere. And so, as a Siege movie, it's really the whole town. I mean, they're just, that's the target, is this whole town. But I loved, first of all, any movie that, like, I didn't have really high expectations of this. And it so exceeded all of them. It was so much fun.
And the cast is great. You mentioned Danny Houston. Ben Foster.
Right.
Ben Foster, who classes up pretty much everything. Also, I love that the vampires speak a completely original language. The language was created for the film.
Yes.
That is cool. I also love, as always, it has a Wilhelm scream in it. After
favorite.
the man is thrown off a metal roof by a vampire.
Oh, nice.
Wilhelm scream.
Yeah.
So check mark there. But it's a great idea. It's such an obvious idea, but it took so long to get to the screen, and really well done. It definitely is a siege. It almost feels like a military invasion.
It does. Yeah.
I love a Siege movie that'll go through a whole town. Like Dustin and I also talked about Tremors, which
Yes.
has been on our
Yeah.
radar. Like, I love that idea. And this movie is so deliciously super bloody.
It is.
And all that red on the white snow. I mean,
Exactly.
my fave.
Yes.
I need to mention, because no one has yet, Josh Hartnett, or Josh
Oh,
Hotness,
yes.
as I like to refer to him, is fantastic in this. And I also, the vampire design is really great, because they look less like humans and more like sharks.
Yeah.
Which I remember like reading an interview that was kind of the idea, is like they wanted them to feel more like creatures than people who were feeding on people. And it works. Like they've got the black eyes like a doll's eyes and all that. But yeah, this is an amazing movie. I showed my fiance this earlier this year, and then it ended up being one of the surprise movies for a 2000s horror marathon at the New Bev a few months ago. So I got to see it again,
Awesome.
not realizing I was going to.
Nice.
Fantastic. So that's our
fantastic movie.
Our number 5 from 2007, 30 Days of Night. So we'll throw it back to you guys for your number 4.
So our number 4 is the controversial Assault on Precinct 13.
You mean it was controversial here in the last 15 minutes?
We got a war going on down here. We can't find the damn thing.
A white-hot night of hate. Assault on Precinct 13.
I love this kind of discussion. I actually really nerd out about qualifying what genre is, because I'm a real genre masher myself in my own work, even though I'm such a horror hound. And so I tend to think that there are so many different kind of subgenres under this umbrella of horror. But I when I think Siege movie, this is the second one I think of. Our number 1 is our main one that I think of. And so I was like, I can't not include this. I love it so much. And I watched it again recently. And of course, these movies you've seen many times because you love them so much. And I really was like struck by like, oh, it's bloody really quickly. They're doing like a whole blood oath thing. They're like pouring
they're
their
Satanists.
blood into a bowl. It's pretty wild. But I just think this movie is so smart and precise, and what they did for so little money. It's just and it's so fun to see, of course, earlier movies by, masters, just getting to see kind of where a lot of that came from, and how sort of Howard Hawksian this movie is, the way that, such a small ensemble, and yet the way they speak to each other is just so fun and kind of bantery. I just loved it. The performances are so much better than they have any business being. It's just a fun movie. And it's my absolute favorite music to write to, so I have to give tribute to the score as well.
Nice,
nice. To write to is this score. So
very cool.
Yeah, this is a fantastic I mean, I'm an easy mark for pretty much anything Carpenter does, especially score wise. On the note, I had not seen Rio Bravo until about a year ago, and this, being Carpenter's riff on Rio Bravo, they actually did it as a double feature with Precinct 13 and New Beth, so I got to see them back to back. Which definitely like recontextualized the movie that I already love. And this one, Allison and I went back and forth on a couple of times. We're like, is it horror? And like, I think our reason for including this is like genre pictures in general, I feel like are kind of very horror adjacent a lot of the time. Because like I know Old Boy has come up a lot on this podcast, and that's not one that I would necessarily consider a horror, but I absolutely see how it could be part of that, like just because of being a genre picture and everything. So that's kind of how we justified the inclusion of this. But also the gang members, just like VFW, they're portrayed as inhuman. Like literally the first thing we see them do after they make their blood oath is they shoot a child. And then outside of the first scene where they're talking about like the blood oath for revenge, they don't talk the entire movie, which just further like kind of makes them seem more unhuman. They're slinking around in the shadows. They're more like monsters than anything. So while I don't think this is a straight horror movie, like Carpenter is absolutely playing with a lot of horror tropes. So that is our justification.
That's okay. You don't need to justify including this movie. I mean, I think when you think, if you do think outside of Westerns, that's probably where the Siege movies come, or like military films.
Sure.
But when you think like really genre films, I think that this is the first movie you think of when you say a Siege movie. This is 100%. The first one, and it's the one that so many others are just based on. So many others, like Malum, again, is just a riff on this movie. Let Us Pray is exactly a riff on this movie. Even, I think, Prince of Darkness, he picked up a lot of the same stuff that he did in this movie, especially, I think, with the inhuman, when you look out and you've got Alice Cooper and all of the other homeless people that are just circling the building. That's directly out of this movie. So I can 100%, I can get behind this idea. And plus, it's just a great movie. And it's so fun. And it just moves, man. It just zips right along.
The pace of it is enviable. Yeah, totally. And I have to say, too, this one is the one that most reminds me of the sort of Alamo story. I grew up in San Antonio, and that's like a huge, going back to Mr. Rubens. There is no basement in the Alamo, and I had to answer that question a lot growing up. And so growing up, going to the Alamo and thinking about sieges forever, it's like this one definitely felt the most like the way they described that story.
When you answered that question, did you answer it like Jan Hooks?
There's no basement in the Alamo.
No, but next time I will.
Because that's how I heard it in my head.
That's right.
That's a great one. That's a great one. Yeah, you don't have to justify it for us. Assault on Precinct 13, they're number 4. Okay, moving up to ours, and this is from 1996. 2 criminals and their hostages unknowingly seek temporary refuge in a truck stop populated by vampires, with chaotic results from dusk till dawn.
Lonely dog, bow your head. Kneel and worship at the feet of Santanico Pandemonium.
So obviously,
Wait, I gotta say it. That's what I call a fucking show!
So I eliminated, I guess, zombies just so I could make a lot of room for vampires. I didn't think about that, actually, until I put them together. I'm like, I got a couple of vampire movies back to back. But we've talked about this movie a lot. You're obviously a fan. I'm a fan as well. And one of the reasons that this movie always hit home, and I know I've said this 100,000 times, because essentially Harvey Keitel plays my dad in this movie. He's wearing my dad's clothes. He's like on a church retreat in a big camper van, and he looks just like my dad. So I had a lot more anxiety in this movie than most people might have, because I'm like, oh God, they're going to kill my dad. And they totally killed my dad. But it's just such a great, super fun movie. It completely changes on a dime halfway through. And honestly, for me, the first half, which isn't maybe technically a horror film, is much scarier movie to me than the second half. The second half is just campy fun.
Well, what happens with that hostage is just...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's awful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's just awful. The entire cast is great. And it has got like a VFW feel about it. Once you get in to the titty twister, it's all of these character actors who've been doing stuff for 100 years and they're in this seedy bar together.
Fred Williamson.
Oh,
again,
yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And it's super fun. And then of course it's the songs that Tito and Tarantula are playing are all awesome.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously you've got the legend Tom Savini is in the film.
Oh yeah.
But the effects
Sex
work.
Machine.
Sex Machine, yeah.
When you read up the fact that they only had 6 full body vampire costumes.
Wow.
And what they were able to do with that, with the editing and the camera work is just amazing because once chaos ensues in there, man, it's just balls to the wall.
It really is, yeah. It's super fun. And I love, one of my favorite shots is where the band turns into vampires and one of them is just strung up a corpse and he's playing like a torso. I love that.
Instantly. Yeah, like where did they get it? They just had it behind the wall? Like what's going on? I love this movie too. This was one of my, this actually came out when I was a senior in high school. It was a whole thing. I had to like beg my friend to take me because we had no money. And I just love this. It's funny, the rewatch, though, I have to say there's a little bit of like, there's some 90s, maybe a little bit of grindhousey sexism kind of going on.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah, no question.
But Juliette Lewis is so, brings that back around. I think she's just so smart in this. And I'm with you, Hope, like that. Harvey Keitel's character, he reminded me so much of my uncle, who's a Baptist preacher in Texas. And my grandparents used to be driving around in RVs all the time. We'd go to RV rallies and stuff.
Sure, yeah.
And there's just
camporees, if you will.
Yeah. So it's like there's a lot of grounded details in this. Otherwise, the shift in this movie, I think, is what most people talk about, and rightly so. It's almost got like a barbarian thing to it, where it's just like the movie just switches on you in the middle, and you're like so grateful in a way because it is almost like a relief from how brutal that first half is.
Yeah, and then you realize when it switches, you realize how perfect that title is.
Oh, yeah.
Love that.
Oh, yeah.
And I love the fact that in the first half, when Seth goes out for fast food, it's Big Kahuna Burger that he brings back. Love that.
Good catch. I love that this movie just keeps giving all the way to that last shot.
Exactly.
About one of the greatest last shots in a
Agreed.
movie.
Agreed.
I love this movie. This was also in consideration for Allison and I's list. I actually showed this as a Siege Night double feature with VFW last year for a movie night. The only reason that this didn't make our list is because such a small percentage of the movie is actually a Siege. So that's why we rolled it out. Otherwise, like this was definitely on the first list that I put together. But I love this movie. It's an amazing movie. It's a shame George Clooney didn't have more roles like Seth Gecko over his career, because like I think probably that and like Out of Sight are the best things he's done that weren't with the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
And this movie also has maybe the best opening scene of any movie ever made.
Oh yeah, John Hawkes. Yeah.
Yeah, John Hawkes. Benny's World of Liquors. That's
God.
such an amazing opening scene. Yeah. And still, like, you watch that, you're like, okay, cool, I'm in for a great... Oh, there are vampires now.
Oh, how?
And can I also just give a shout out to the documentary about the making of this movie? If you're listening to this, you're a film lover, Full Tilt Boogie.
Yes.
Watch that, too.
Ooh.
We have not, so we will now.
Hello.
We will be doing that immediately.
It's really good.
All right, that's awesome. That's number 4, our list from 96, From Dusk Till Dawn. So we throw it back to you. Top 3.
This is really fresh. I just rewatched this morning. The first Tales from the Crypt movie, Demon Night.
The demons are here! And ladies, if you think Demon Night is too gross and yucky... Whoa! Thank you.
This was on the first list I put together too, because this is another one that I think like a lot of genre fans like love this movie, but like by and large, like I don't think it gets nearly the love that it should. It's some William Sadler popping up on the list again as the main character, and then you have Billy Zane in hands down the best role of his entire career as the collector in this. And then even more character actors. You got Thomas Hayden Church,
right?
Perpetual character actor, rest in peace, Dick Miller,
right?
CCH Pounder, and then very early Jada Pinkett Smith. This is probably maybe 1 or 2 movies after like Poetic Justice, so pretty early for her as well. But yeah, amazing movie. It's funny, it's bloody, and it's a full-on siege movie. It's a bunch of demons trying to get this relic and kill a boarding house full of people in New Mexico.
I love the specific rules of this and how often they sort of, I wouldn't say change, but just sort of switch from your expectation. And I love, like, the writing of this is, again, it's sort of like, in this kind of movie, it's so much better writing than you would expect. And of course, it's got Ernest Dickerson at the helm. Again,
Yes.
it's just like this real artistry to something that is so pulpy. I watched this really late, like a year or two ago, and because all of our horror fan friends were like, "You still haven't seen Demon Knight?" And I was like, "Come on, really?" And I was like, "No, this is actually damn delightful."
Yeah, it's weird how, and I don't even know how many years the TV show ran, but something just about Tales from the
7.
Crypt is
Yes.
such a timestamp for
Yeah.
me. It just immediately takes my mind to a certain time in life.
Was actually when we first started dating. I watched it when I was a kid. I watched it like in my hometown. We watched it religiously. That and Dream On, right, which would come on right after it.
Right on.
And then when we started dating, it became like our ritual. Whatever day of the week it was, I'm like, blah, 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 blah. We got to stay home tonight. We watched all those.
It's a very it's a really interesting timestamp, and I didn't realize it ran. What'd you say, 7 years?
7 years.
Yeah,
Yep,
awesome.
7
And then
seasons.
they branched out into the movies. So you're right, man. Great cast.
Yeah, and just exactly what you would expect from a Tales from the Crypt movie. I mean, they didn't deviate from the sort of campy, horror, funny, goofiness,
angles.
right? Bad effects.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, what if we had a long episode with a movie budget?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun.
All right, so Demon Knight, number 3 on Allison and Dustin's list. We'll go on to our number 3 from 2002. We've talked about this a time or 6 or 10. This is a routine military exercise turning into a nightmare in the Scotland wilderness. Dog Soldiers.
Sarge! I'm in the closet! Bitch of a werewolf movie. Playtime! Dog Soldiers. It'll blow your house down.
This is a Western. Somebody just took a Western, they dropped it in the Highlands of Scotland, and they decided that, that the black hats were all going to actually be werewolves. And that's how this whole thing goes. I fucking love this movie. And it's so funny. And it's so military, because it's a military group of people, and they're pinned down, and it's such a great, all of the tropes that you expect to see, like the moles, the cowards on the inside, but what happens to them is so startling and gory and funny. It's just such a well-told film. I mean, of course, Neil Marshall then went on to make The Descent, which is one of my all-time favorite. I think one of the best horror films ever made. But in this one, it's not like he had the budget for.
Right.
I mean, this cast. There are some names in this cast, so they had to cost a little bit of something. But I was very impressed by the effects as well.
Right, because when you're doing a werewolf movie, right away people's minds go to, all right, the transformation,
right,
and what they're able to do with shadows and silhouettes. I'm like, man, you do a good job,
and a good-looking rubber suit, man.
Yeah, of getting away with not having the budget or the prosthetics or whatever, and making it really cool. I think it's a wonder of Marshall's work and the effects work, and getting away, doing a lot with what they had. Is amazing.
Yeah, and then Liam Cunningham, who actually also is in Let Us Pray, which didn't make the list, but got to mention. Mainly because Pollyanna McIntosh is in it, but but I love him in this movie, and also Sean Pertwee.
Oh yeah.
Is so great in this movie. I just I can't say enough lovely things about this one. How you guys feel about this one?
Literally, the only reason this didn't make my list is because I wanted VFW, but I saw it was on yours, so I was like, I get to talk about Dog Soldiers either way. I love this movie. I saw it when it came out. Like, we rented it on video, and I remember it was like, this is like, how did I not hear about this? Like, I love werewolf movies to begin with. And as far as my all-time werewolf movies, it goes American Werewolf, Howling, this.
Yeah.
The effects in this are amazing. The single location is a great idea. Like, the action is really good. I love everything about this movie. It's an absolute blast. And the werewolves especially look really good. And Sean Pertwee and Cunningham are, of course, as mentioned, fantastic in this.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I love this too. Actually, Dustin showed this to me for the first time just a few months ago. It was one of those like glaring omissions on my view list for so long. And I really loved it. I thought it was so smart, and it seems like the closest to on the list to Night of the Living Dead in terms of you can absolutely see that Marshall was, as we all are, worshipful of that movie.
Right.
The strategy involved in this one is kind of akin to that, where it's like there's so many discussions about strategy and how to approach this problem.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was so smart, and I loved the confinement of that set of the house is so special. Because it does feel like this sort of like strange kind of almost fairy tale, folk tale kind of place.
Oh yeah,
it does
very much so.
Yeah,
I mean, you can look at it as a riff on not only Little Red Riding Hood, but the Three Little Pigs.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
One of the things too I like about it,
Gretel.
what I think is subtle in the film, although it becomes more glaring as in the third act. And it's an old movie, but I don't want to give anything away. But there's a current of sexual politics going on in this movie that that I think sets you up nicely for The Descent, which is also essentially a military film that he just made not a military film. And the two have a lot in common, including really fucking scary monsters. But I do really love the way the film turns in the third act, and you're like, oh God, I should have seen that coming.
Yeah, my only note on it is there's one line of dialogue that I feel like almost undoes the whole movie. But I take that out in my mind and I worship the rest of it.
Yeah.
Sort of like I take a certain moment out of Straw Dogs from my mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I also love how it's got multiple homages to other movies.
Yeah.
Which I always love to spot those. So that's a goodie. We agree. Our number 3 from 2002, Dog Soldiers. So we're getting to the top here, creme de la creme. So we'll go back to your list, Allison and Dustin, for number 2.
Our number 2 is The Mist.
Shut the door!
It is time to take sides. Read the good book. It calls for blood.
I promise you won't let the monsters get me.
Who she's gonna sacrifice to make it all better?
We want the boy.
You try it.
Kill him!
I actually just rewatched this again last night.
Nice.
It had been a long time.
I did this morning.
Oh, that's funny. I've been having a lot of fun rewatching Siege movies since we started talking about doing this episode. I love how smart this movie is, and yet how stupid most of the people in it are. I love that they are so human in their frailty and their panic. I love talk about just another great movie of like these incredible, rich, varied characters. You have Andre Braugher, who I worked with briefly, and is just an absolute gem of person. And he never, I feel like he never gets talked about enough, even though he's like Mr. Super Reliable. He's in so many great things. But he plays somebody so unlikable in this movie, but in a very human way, like in that he feels like the people around him, the townies, he's like from the city, and he feels like the townies are sort of like, we hate the city guy, like the sort of city people versus the townies versus the like people who've been there for a long time, feels very much of that. It's from a story or a novella by Stephen King. And it has that kind of running theme that he also often explores, this idea that like even within the same place, there's all this sort of not even necessarily class, although that's certainly a part of it, but just the way that you look at life and what your occupations are, what your family situations are,
cliquishness.
Like what level. Yeah, I think it's so smart, and it's so full of amazing actors, including Mr. Sadler. Again, another William Sadler appearance. And Thomas Jane is so great and sort of primal in this, like like nobody kind of like freaks out and sort of cries and screams quite like Thomas Jane in this movie. He's outstanding. The monster design is really really special and kind of pulpy. Like that's sort of like not aged as well. It has aged into a bit sort of like B-movie monster, but in a fun way, because it is sort of like about this like, this can't be real, right? So the whole time you're like almost looking at it going, it can't be real, right? But it's gorgeous. Marcia Gay Harden she's so good. She takes a character that you would normally just disregard and really grounds her in this, like she has her own logic and then she sees her opportunity to be this like cult leader.
I think it would be a very interesting rewatch right now, because I think those divides that you're talking about have only been accentuated in the years since this movie has come out.
Yeah, it feels prescient watching it again.
Yeah, every single character in this feels like someone that you have met.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no one feels like a caricature. Like, and it's weird. Like the characters that you would kind of like, Tom Jane is not so much like this brave, like heroic guy. Is like he's just a dad trying to protect his son, and that's kind of what drives him. And then like essentially the bravest guy you get is Toby Jones, as the store employee, who is also an accomplished target shooter, apparently.
I love that revelation. That's on par with a revelation in Your Next, which I won't give away.
Right.
That kind of thing where you're just like, oh, there are layers to these people.
Yeah.
And people are constantly showing them to us.
And then like even seeing William Sadler's character like shift over the course of the movie, because he starts off like, in one of the ladies even says like, I had you as a kid, you're kind of an underachiever. It's like you see it like he's got this inferiority complex. And like you see him being scared, like he's the human analog for like, us, because we're not the heroes. And then like you see him start drawing towards Marcia Gay Harden because it makes sense. And I remember reading a lot of the inspiration for how Darabont approached this came from the episode of The Twilight Zone, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street.
Yeah.
Because 50% of this is about the monsters, 50% is about the danger from other people.
Sure.
Yep.
Yes. That's the thing. They would have been all right if they had just stuck together.
And I think that's a lot of what makes this movie work. And on the note of the effects, I'm kicking myself because I watched the regular version. There is a black and white cut of this.
It's beautiful.
That is amazing, and it also covers up a lot of the CGI.
It really does. The black and white version is so stunning. It's so, and it doesn't seem like a gimmick because it's a movie. It's called The Mist. You know what I mean? Like it's just about this cloudy. It's the black and white version is so gorgeous.
And that's what Darabont wanted originally too, because he wanted like that classic kind of Twilight Zone monster movie feel to it. And of course, he was like, no one's gonna watch a black and white movie these days. There's like special editions floating around, which is what I have that have the black and white version. But highly recommend seeking that out. And then, of course, we can't talk about this movie without that ending.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What
we
a
won't give
gut
away,
punch.
but my gosh, is it so smart and so in keeping with the theme of the whole film? Like just slow down, think it through.
Yeah, and just it's so devastating. It's so devastating. And one of the things I love about it too is one of the things I love about the whole movie when you're trapped inside that store with them is that it does feel authentic, and a lot of it is like you don't want to see it because you're like, I would not also help that person. You know what I mean? And the mom.
Yeah.
I love the mom who's like, who's going to help? My son's at home. I've got who's coming with
my
me,
little ones.
and I'm like thinking to myself, fuck you, you go. Why would you drag our ass out with you because you left your kids at home? You know what I mean? Like, and that's so I kind of do. I'm like, but what I love is her performance because she's just unlikable. You know what I mean? Like she's not one of these like helpless. You don't want to help her, and then at the end when she's looking at you, and she was fine. You should have just helped her because you knew better, and you should have just helped her, and then everything would have been fine. I love that. I love that the movie makes you kind of hate you, right? Because I think you feel more akin to what's going on inside there if you can really feel part of the shifting, I just got to survive this, And for a movie that's so surreal, so like, out there, so B-movie, I love that it can make you uncomfortable with what decisions you would make if you were also trapped in there with Marcia Gay Harden.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. You can't help
like
your
I
mind
would probably smack her.
Oh, yeah.
All right, moving up to our number 2, and this is from 2015. And this, interesting, you mentioned Straw Dogs a minute ago. This movie, according to writer-director Jeremy Saulnier, was partly inspired by Straw Dogs. It's a punk rock band forced to fight for survival after witnessing a murder at a neo-Nazi skinhead bar, Green Room.
You can't keep us here, man.
We're not keeping you. You're just staying.
Shoot who's left. Let him bleed.
Get ready to run.
Here we go.
Careful now.
This'll be over soon, gentlemen.
Now, this is our number 2, but it is your number 1. So if you guys want to start us off on the conversation,
I remember, I think Blue Ruin was the first thing by Jeremy Saulnier that I saw first. I remember absolutely loving it. And loving Macon Blair, who's the lead in that, who's in a smaller role in this. But I love Blue Ruin, and then I found Murder Party after the fact, and then Green Room got announced. I started seeing the trailer, and I was like, oh, this like, because I used to play in punk bands when I was in high school and through college and everything. I was like, oh boy, this is aggressively marketed towards me. And even like a lot of the DIY stuff, like when I pivoted to comedy, like I did a lot of what they do. I didn't siphon gas or anything, but like I drove cross country. I slept in parking lots and like was barely making it by. So like a lot of that was very relatable. And just, yeah, the cast, like Anton Yelchin, God,
Imogen Poots.
What an absolute tragedy.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Imogen Poots. And then Patrick Stewart as a neo-Nazi leader. Like, yeah, just a fantastic cast, super violent, super grimy. Like, and this movie is like tense from start to finish. Like the opening scene, it's like, how are they going to make it back across the country to get home? Because like they're doing this kind of weird shoestring it along as they can.
Speaking
and
of
then,
shoestrings.
they witnessed a murder, and now there are neo-Nazis. So now it's even worse. Like the movie does a great job of keeping them in varying degrees of danger from the opening scene. And it doesn't let up until that final few moments with Anton and Imogen Poots sitting on the roadside.
And such a great final line. I love that final
Yes,
line.
yes.
Hey, and how
So
about a Macon Blair sighting in Oppenheimer?
That's
huh?
right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice for Macon Blair.
Always
good to
one of
know.
my favorite sightings.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm going to see that today, actually.
Right.
So I will keep an eye out for
Josh
that.
Hartnett as well, actually.
Yeah.
Josh Hartnett has a pretty
Josh
he's got a
Hartnett,
big part in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, hotness,
yeah.
isn't it? There you go.
Yeah,
Hotness is coming back.
This movie is the epitome of lean and mean.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it doesn't waste a minute of your time.
No.
And you are tense the whole time. You know, that scene with Patrick Stewart on one side of the door. I mean, he's just that classical voice he's got, you know, that delivery, but it's just so menacing.
Yeah.
And when he says something like, "This will not end well. This will not," oh, man. And then, of course, with the arm.
blah,
yeah.
blah. And the dogs,
great.
shut up. Oh,
Yeah.
my God, with the dogs. And, Alia Shawkat, who you love from the beginning. She's like the one character you just really love to death. And, oh, my God. Yeah, the entire. And Macon Blair, too. I mean, he's such a strangely sympathetic character in this movie that. It reminds you that you don't have to have one-dimensional villains, that you can have because it makes a movie, it complicates your emotions watching a movie. When you just have very one-dimensional characters and on either side of the line, it makes it easier. You can just root for people to be murdered. But when you have to see them as humans, it makes the experience much more complicated and I think much more satisfying. And when you say this was marketed so aggressively for you, just that the poster was essentially the Clash
The
album
London
cover,
Calling.
I was like,
Yes.
I can't wait to see this. What is this movie? Please take me.
What if Paul Simon had a machete instead of a bass?
I know. Yeah, it was such a masterpiece at what it was trying to accomplish. It was so grim and grimy and gritty and just electric.
And there's always something just primally uncomfortable about people in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Because the audience then can go, oh, that could so easily. Oh, you just walked in at the wrong time,
It's
and
the
now
smallest moment that just ruins
Yeah.
everything.
And then
I love
also-
this movie so much. Oh my God.
I loved too how authentically they set up nobody knows where they are. They won't there's no they can all die and no one will ever know. Usually you're like, I'm not sure I fully buy that. But these guys, I mean, they just make it such an integral part of who the band is that you're like, oh yeah, y'all can just die. You're all just gonna die.
But there's like a single cell phone between the entire band. Yeah.
The single cell phone, that was so smart and such a great way to also talk about their sort of poverty that they're living with. It's I had the opposite experience. I went in cold. I had no idea what this really was, if memory serves. And it was like one of those movie-going experiences where you're like, oh, this has like changed me as an artist, as a person. I was like so in it. I remember vividly that I had like bought a drink. I didn't drink any of it. I didn't do any. I had no snacking, no drinking, nothing. And I was just like this the whole time. I was so in love with it. And it's still one of my very full-on favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
And something that I can definitely say like has inspired me. Every single thing I'm writing, I'm thinking about Green Room.
That's
Green
awesome.
Room is always in the pitch decks. Green Room, Green Room. And so when I came to Dustin and Michelle's apartment the first time, they had a Green Room poster.
Nice.
And I was like, I love these people.
That's right. These are my people.
Green Room people are my kind of people. And I, even though I don't relate to the specifics of like, I wasn't a music person, I didn't go, live in vans and that sort of thing. I think being a DIY person of any kind, I think that's mostly where I come from, is making DIY films. The Apology is the first one where it's like, oh, I have actual budget and a union crew. This is insane. But I'm used to like who brought the food, and probably me. And so I think all this, I always say the specificity equals universality. So even though I don't relate to the specifics of this world, you can still see yourself in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's and the personal. I love anything. I try to do this with my stuff too. I think most artists do, really. Where it's like you take your personal stuff and you put those specific details into whatever the story is, and that's what makes it super special. Because you could say like, well, there's plenty of like siege movies, or there's plenty of werewolf movies, but it's like if you are putting your particular obsessions and themes and stuff into it, that's what makes it so special. And I think this Saulnier's work is just so fascinating for that. And for me, I love all the performances in this, but Macon Blair is one of my favorite performances ever in this movie because of everything you were saying, Hope, where it's just like this idea that it's like, it's scary, or if you understand the motivations and they're still making these awful choices.
Yeah.
It's so great because it's like, right there, we're all just humans in this like human pinball machine, and we're just fucking up left and right. And it was really beautiful to see the process of him realizing how much like he was almost in a sort of like molasses covered nightmare where he's like, I guess I just keep doing this.
Right.
I'm gonna keep double and tripling down. Oh man, it's so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies where you feel like as a film goer, you're unsafe. Like you just don't know where it's going to take you. And that is so uncommon. That's such an uncommon feeling. And it's just, you're just so jazzed to be a part of that. Like I don't know what's going to happen next. Yeah. Like you're so absorbed in it, and you feel like, you're not getting any of the little cues that you're expecting to let you know something is going to happen. There's like essentially no score. It's not like there's shadowy things happening. You're the whole time you're like, anything could happen at any minute. Oh my God, where is that dog?
Yeah.
Oh, the dogs. Oh,
the dogs are great. And there's also like going in, there was no part of me. I was like, at least one person in the band is going to get killed, right? No, everyone except one person in the band is going to get killed.
Yeah.
When he gets his arm hacked up, I also forgot how gnarly that was.
It's nasty.
I was like, how is his hand still attached?
Yeah, it's nasty.
Very nasty. Yeah, that is why it's number 1 on Allison and Dustin's list, and number 2 for us. So that is a Green Room, and it only leaves room at the top.
That's right. That's right.
And this one, this needs no introduction at all. From 1986, Aliens.
All right, people, movement. Talk to me, Hudson.
I got signals. I got readings in front and behind.
There's nothing back here.
Look, I'm telling you, there's something moving and it ain't us.
Get them out of there!
We're some real pretty shit now, man. That's it, man. It's game over, man. It's game over.
We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
So I feel like maybe you and I are the only ones who are old enough to remember the impact of this movie when it first came out, because it was fucking scary.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. And then, of course, the classic scene where you realize that it's a siege movie, and they're just looking at the dots coming closer and closer and closer, Game over, man. We're fucked. Game over. You are inside that room with them going, well, wait, they're inside the room. Yeah. Well, how are they not inside the room? And then everybody looks up and you're like, oh, no. Yeah. I mean, it's just classic.
It's just an accentuation of, because if you remember from Alien, which I remember seeing in the theater when it came out.
I think I saw Aliens first, actually.
You had that little beep, 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 but just one.
Yeah.
And now, like, all right, we're cranking that up to 11. And
That's
it does become just a total siege. And it's so thrilling. And you can fight all day about whether it's a horror movie or but I think it is. It's a monster movie.
It's a monster movie.
It's a siege with monsters, and it's so thrilling. And of course, you accentuate the total badassery of Ripley.
Yeah.
Sigourney Weaver is such a great character, and Newt, and just go on and on and on. And it's a siege that she just fights through to the end, and even after the end.
It is essentially an action movie. Alien was a horror film for sure. It was, a haunted house movie out in space. Whereas Aliens, the sequel, was James Cameron's action movie, but it was a creature feature. It's clearly a creature feature. And there are so many things about it that are horrifying, like the sort of catacombs of humans all waiting to give birth in that horrible way. And that alone is such a horrifying image of suffering and like potential for suffering. This just they're suffering now, but just wait. It's such an awful look. That it is unsettling in a way that horror films really, really are. I'm saying this out loud because I have argued before that Aliens wasn't horror movie enough to make a certain list. But I think it depends on what the topic is.
Sure.
And for siege movies, it's such a classic that I just felt like I had to include it.
Yeah, and then there's the classic device of a race against time because you have that big computer voice counting down before the thing is going to explode.
Yeah.
And your blood is racing. So it's so many elements just work perfectly.
Yeah.
And funny, there's actually some because I watched The Mist and Aliens last night, and
Wow.
so there's this crossover. I just went on I had written a bunch. I went on the picket line, and suddenly I was like, I'm gonna watch 3 Siege movies yesterday, and so one of the crossovers that I thought was really interesting was also the design of that sort of like the webbing of like the person being taken and kind of webbed up and things being invaded inside of them. I think that's a really fun example of seeing where one film has inspired another film's aesthetic, and yet they both feel very unique to that world that they define. And oh man, I love that. I love Hicks and his way of just, when Ripley's like, here's my recommendation. We go to space, we like hit the bomb, and
only way to be sure.
The only way to be sure. And he kind of says the exact same thing that she says and kind of winks at her. I was this is so satisfying.
Yeah. Right, because he knows who's alpha. He can see alpha when he,
100%. And he has no problem with that, which I love. I also really loved, I think it's Hudson, the Bill Paxton character. Yeah. I love his evolution. I did not pick up on it until this latest viewing, this idea that like he was so, game over, you say, like this sort of bravado silliness to him, like to kind of hide his fear. And that starts to evaporate. And it's like, he's still kind of funny, but he's really just kind of like, can we leave the room now? It's just like, he's so much more like letting it just be like a little stiller.
One of the things I love about the movie, at the beginning, of course, they're a military unit and they're referring to her as like Sleeping Beauty. But it doesn't take very long for the whole military unit to recognize who is in charge. It's like they've been trained to follow a leader, and it doesn't take very long for them to go, she's the leader. And you know what? If they had done that in Alien, we wouldn't have needed a sequel.
That's right. Don't let him in.
Just do what Ripley says.
Yeah.
So they learned that more quickly in the second one.
And there's so many iconic moments that have just leapt into the pop culture. The suit, of course.
Oh, yeah.
When she gets in the suit.
Power loader.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And then the standoff when she realizes she's in the room of eggs.
Oh, my God,
you've got one mother looking at essentially another mother figure and just, what are we going to do here?
Yeah.
And then she tortures him.
And then she's like, here's what we'll do.
Yeah.
You let me out with my baby, and I'm not going to harm your babies. And then she's like, psych!
That was so amazing. And it's funny because I had built it up to be more of a complicated thing, and it's really mostly that moment. But it's like, and the protection, like you say, of her being in the lift, in the forklift, the walking forklift or whatever. I love all that. I'm a mom. So much of my stuff is about being a mom. And I just thought that was so smart. Like that was her sort of, her hero's journey is getting to sort of see her motherhood wish through. And also, can we just talk about Paul Reiser in this movie?
Oh, yes.
Let's talk about the real villain of this movie.
He's great.
Smarmy.
He's so smarmy in that, it's almost like what we were kind of saying about Green Room too, where it's like this internal logic of no, but let's be reasonable.
Right.
He's never intimidating. He's always trying to be your buddy. That's really scary. Really scary. I love that this movie is almost a reverse Siege movie from most of the ones we're talking about. We're usually with the people that are inside the thing. The things inside the thing are the aliens. They're the ones trying to defend themselves.
Yeah. Good point.
I love this movie. I think it's an amazing movie. Like Allison just said, if Precinct 13 was our controversial pick, I think this is a controversial pick. This is I feel like that the scene in the room, absolutely full on Siege. I feel like there's not enough of it to qualify that for me. Which is what this wasn't even in consideration. And then I saw your list, I was like, oh really? Okay.
But it's not like we could be like, oh come on, don't put aliens at the top of your list. Of course you could put aliens at the top of any list.
It's still an amazing movie. It's still on its worst day, I will still fight that it is as good as the original. Like it's a fantastic movie. It's so good. Just for me, like it didn't even really like kind of occur to me because I just didn't feel like those elements are there. But when they are, they're amazing.
Well, I remember
Like,
you said that the way you categorized it was essentially the majority of the film had to be a siege.
Yes.
Right. So
Yeah,
which
and
was
that-
not
and that
really
was
what I was
for me.
looking for. I was looking for
Oh yeah, no.
like
We also
something
came
that
at different
punctuated. And
parameters,
for me,
too.
it was just that scene. It was just the
And it's a
game
fantastic
over.
scene. I honestly, I kind of would love to see an Alien movie that is nothing but that.
But them coming for you?
Yeah, because I mean, this movie is full of great scenes, but like that is easily outside of the power loader, like probably one of the more iconic scenes in the movie is when they realize like they're in the vents.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so smart. I love the idea of something that could just be in some other level. Like it's in your space, but it's like,
Yeah.
you know, like where's a movie where it's like it's in your well, I guess it's all ghost movies. So it's like in another level, but it's in your literal room.
Right.
Yeah.
I do think though one of the reasons that I like this one for the list was that it is the opposite siege. We're with the people who've come. We're with the military who've
smart.
come.
The invading force.
We're with the invading force that is, as they do in every siege movie, going to die.
Yeah. And that was
Yes.
that was kind of the caveat that Allison and I talked about, where because like we were kind of talking about it too, and like trying to wrap our brains. It was like, I guess like if you flip it, like the aliens are the ones that are under siege, so like it kind of makes sense that way.
Yeah, I love that.
So yeah, from that perspective, like it made a little bit more sense. But yeah, we also get to talk about aliens.
Right,
so I'm
exactly.
not about
Right?
that.
That's right.
That's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. I love I thought this was ended up being a really fascinating topic because when Dustin told me about your podcast and I started listening, the first one I saw was Housewives in Horror.
Oh.
And I was like, these people are my people.
Yeah.
I was so excited about that. But that one is also a lot more specific, right? You're talking about like, it's a clearly defined concept. This part of the fun of it was coming up with what even the specific of the concept was. That's delightful.
And by the way, we should give him a shout out because I think, didn't Dustin just recently post that he's made it through every single episode?
That's right.
I've listened to all of them. Yes.
Wow.
Yay.
Wow.
Thank you. That is very kind of you.
I
And
wish
also, I'm sorry.
I wish we had something to hand to you now virtually, but we'll have to come up with an award.
I'll take my trophy whenever it's ready.
All right, fair enough. This has been a fantastic conversation and a great idea, Dustin.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
Sieges in Horror. So we talked a little bit at the beginning about where we can all find you guys and what you're working on, but let me put it in your own words. Where can we get a hold of you?
You can find me on all my socials. I'm at Dustin Meadows on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky now. I have a YouTube page. It's Dustin Meadows Comedy. That's where all my shorts live. I've got a composer reel there, so you can see some of my work that I'm doing. I'm also currently submitting my most recent short film, You Are What You Eat, to festivals. I'm submitting it to one in Columbus with the hopes of being there for it. So my hope is that'll start making some festival rounds as well. Allison actually AD'd on that for me, and it was my most ambitious short to date for sure.
Right.
I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, so hopefully that'll be making the rounds and people can see that because I have not made it available to anyone outside of the cast yet.
That short is awfully fun. We had a really good time. It's very bloody and nuts, and I had a good time. It's always fun to just, make something with buddies. It's a good time.
Yes.
Well, and Allison, we talked about The Apology being on Shudder, but you can also find it at other outlets.
Yes. So The Apology is also on Hulu and AMC Plus and Blu-ray and VOD. And we did have a 1-week theatrical, so I know your joy. It's very fun to get to see your movie with an audience is really exciting. So, and you can also find me at Allison Starlock, ALISON, the word star, and LOCKE. That is my actual middle name. My brother's name is Liberty. And I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky and Instagram. And technically TikTok, but I keep not using it. I mostly just watch people's TikToks. Maybe one of these days you can follow me and maybe you'll get a surprise.
Well, as usual, you can find us easily on the Fright Club Pod account on Twitter. Also, you can find us on madwolf.com is the main website, Mad Wolf Columbus on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. And I'm going to remember to mention our special Fright Club podcast group on Facebook.
That's right.
We'd love to have you a part of. Just put in a request to join, and boom, we'll get you in there. It's a lot of fun as well. So lots of places to connect with us. And in the meantime, keep in touch. We'd love to get some more feedback on maybe some of these movies that we forgot about.
That's
Something
right.
that should have qualified for our list and didn't. Let us know. In the meantime, until next. Oh, what is next time? We're going to be back. Our next Fright Club Live will be at Gateway Film Center in Columbus.
That's right. It's going to be August 11th. We will actually have a double feature because Obstacle Corpse is going to premiere at Gateway Film Center on August 11th. And then at 9 o'clock, we're going to do a podcast about the best Swedish horror. And we're going to follow that with our classic from this year. We're going to show Hour of the Wolf, Ingmar Bergman's Hour of the Wolf.
Oh.
So every once in a while we class it up, Allison. And this is the time.
I feel like Bergman is like such a companion to horror stuff, right? So much of his stuff is horrifying. I'm Fanny and Alexander, there's so many Virgin Spring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's one of my now personal goals to one of these days, but to go to Gateway Film Center in Ohio. I'm an LA lady. And see one of your in-person things.
Do it. Come out.
Love to have you. That's going to be a big night next time. So until then, keep in touch. And she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Fright Club Podcast.
Stay frightful,
my friends.
Yay!